Namaste, and welcome to a new episode of the Force Niyama podcast. In this podcast, we explore the teachings of Yogacharya BKS Iyengar with his most senior direct disciples who are leading yoga teachers today. The 5 niyamas were outlined by Sage Patanjali in the Yoga Sutras, the most fundamental text ever written on yoga. The 4th niyama is Svadhyaya, a Sanskrit word meaning the study of self. It is a continuous examination and reflection of one's actions and tendencies, which leads to a deeper understanding of oneself. Yogacharya BKS Iyengar said, "The person practicing Svadhyaya reads his own book of life, at the same time that he writes and revises it." May the insights and experiences shared in this podcast be of support and inspiration on your own journey. In this episode, I'm privileged to share a conversation with senior Iyengar Yoga practitioner and teacher from Mumbai, Arti Mehta. Arti was 10 when she was first introduced to Iyengar Yoga and joined Guruji's classes in Mumbai. She comes from a family where yoga is an essential part of life. Both her parents and all her siblings were studying yoga with Guruji for many decades. Today, Arti Mehta and all her siblings, Neeta Datta, Birjoo Mehta, and Rajvi Mehta, are among the most senior Iyengar Yoga teachers globally. For over 20 years, Arti has been working with children with special needs and helping them to cope with their conditions through the practice of yoga and have a better quality of life. In the first part of our conversation, Arti recounts the early years of her yoga practice and her journey into teaching. She speaks about the importance of building an emotional connect with students and shares her experience on how the practice of Iyengar Yoga can make an effective impact for people with dyslexia, autism, and ADHD. Now, let me welcome Arti Mehta. So thank you so much for taking this time to speak with me and share your message to a larger community of Iyengar Yoga students.
Okay.
I would like to start with the beginning of your journey. So how and when did you start practicing Iyengar Yoga, and what inspired you to commit to this path and even take Iyengar Yoga as your profession?
Okay, so for me, it was my family because of which I got into it. So it was my father. I think he must have started somewhere in 1971, and I was just born then. And it was somewhere in 1981 where we had our trust classes. So that was the time I was introduced to attend those classes. And then I was there for the Saturday class, which Guruji used to teach when he used to come to Bombay. So it's more like because the family was into it and I was asked to go, and there was no saying no at that point of time, that you went to the classes.
How old were you back then?
So I was 10 years. And then of course that time, because you had to go, you went there. There was no reason to not go. It wasn't that I understood much or whatever it is. You continued being there in the class. And then it was like when Guruji used to be coming to the classes. And I remember in one of the classes when it was there, and he said, "Oh, this person is doing so well." Because, see, we didn't have any separate classes at that point of time. So whether you are children, whether you are patients, whether you have general classes, all of us were doing it together. At that point of time, there was some patient who had come to the class, might be a heart patient that time. I wouldn't understand much. And he was put in something like Viparita Karni. He was there for half an hour, and Guruji said, "Well done." And like I was wondering that this person has been sleeping throughout, and what is Guruji saying, "Well done," because I was not matured enough to understand anything. So those kind of things. And afterwards, as the children's, when there used to be the pranayam classes or any of those, it was like Guruji would say that, okay, you can do these back bends, do this separately. So for children, it was very, very different the way he got into it. So that was more of how I entered in.
What was your first impression of him?
So actually, in that sense, there was no first impression, because I had been hearing about Guruji from the family. So if there's anything happening, you are there, you have seen him. And for me, as a child in that sense, he was always like, full heartiness on his face, you could see, full of smiles, laughs. And with children, he was like one of the child. So he was like, okay, you can do this, what is it? And those kind of things. So it didn't It was nothing in that sense, like people say, awe-inspiring or something, because for me, I didn't know anything much, and it was where everyone went and we went. But there was something about him definitely which you just wanted to be there. There was no fear, or you weren't scared of anything in that sense at that point of time when Guruji was there. So he would be the one who would just, so I don't remember much about it, but yes, I do remember it started off like on the Saturday that we have to go to the classes. Before that, I was just, must have accompanied my dad for the Sunday class to just see what was happening, since Birjoo and Neeta were already into it. Then I think Rajvi got in, so I was the last one to get in since I'm the youngest in the family. But only thing I remember, because the schools were on at that point of time, and if it was a Sunday morning, which was also there, and they would be saying, no, Sunday morning we have to wake up late because it's a holiday. And I said, no, Sunday morning means I have to go to the yoga class.
So where do you think this curiosity or commitment or passion that you didn't want even to sleep longer on Sundays but want to go to the yoga class, where do you think it was coming from?
I have a feeling like at that point of time, it is just that, like if my father said, you're going, and since everyone else was going, it was a part like, say if all of us are going out for a gathering, or all of us are having our meals together. So it was similar to that everyone's going to the class and you're supposed to go to the class and you're just going. So there was no reason to say yes or no about it. And you just went because you were going. But there was no reason to miss out also. So once you started, you just continued. So I remember, people at that point of time, it was different. People would fall at his feet or no, I don't even remember that much. Later on, things really changed and it was out of respect. So initially when I started off, it was like my father would kind of do namaskar to him. So I started doing namaskar. In my heart of hearts, I did not understand. It was just following what they were doing. But then there was a time, I think after a few years, that it was in one of the classes. And at that point of time, I think there was an annual camp which was taken at Khandala, where I had also been with the other people. And generally pranayam is not really taught to us, especially when you are so young. And that particular class, there was something which I got. I cannot express, something which was there. And literally it was from in my own heart, inside of my heart, deep inside, I fell at his feet. So that was the first time it was like came from within, or respect, or whatever you call. Before that it was, you are seeing what everyone is doing and just following by observing what people do when you go to meet. And that's what it was. So after that, there was something which just kind of, something lit in, something different was experienced, and then you were there.
So for how many years, you continued attending his classes, and when were you assigned or
so the
appointed
classes
to
which
start
started
teaching?
from 81 or something like that, which I started, it has not stopped at all. So when Guruji was coming to Bombay, it was always there. Whenever we had a chance of going to Pune, or whenever classes happening. And one thing, we all were fortunate that at Pune, we were allowed to attend even 1 or 2 days since you were regulars in Bombay, and it has been a long time association, so that was good. So there was no reason to stop, so that always continued. As far as teaching is concerned, I think it was Sam Motiwala, one of the senior students of Guruji, as well as the teacher who is no more. And he was the one when I was going to college, and once he asked, what are you doing? So I said, I'm going to college, I'm studying. So he said, why don't you teach? So I said, I'm not going to teach. You have seen Guruji teaching, and there's no reason of teaching, nothing in the head in that sense. And he said, so he used to be taking the classes also, which I was, he used to attend Guruji's Saturday's classes, and that's how he was supposed to take a class on Tuesday, Friday morning, which continued for all the years. And at that point of time, he said that, why don't you start teaching? So I said, how can I teach? So he said, are you the teacher or am I the teacher? That was the question he asked me. So I didn't say anything. So he said, no, I'm telling you and you come. So what happened is there was this Taj Health Club where there used to be classes happening. I think Jawar was teaching there earlier. Feroza was teaching there. And then that health club closed down. At the same time, there was quite a many of those students who were already practicing Iyengar Yoga at the health club, and they had a place at Kulaba. So at that point of time, they wanted some teacher, and that's the reason Sam Uncle, whom I call him Sam Uncle, Sam Motiwala. So he was the one who asked me, to which I refused. And then he said, I am telling you. So he kind of, just teach. So Sam Uncle said that, okay, I'm going to start on Friday morning, and you're going to come and assist me, and you're going to be there. So then he was there in the class. He must have taken the first class or the second class. And then he said, okay, you take over. So he used to be present in the classes when I used to be teaching. And for that matter, that whole pyramidal structure. So even the first classes that we started off was on Tuesday. Morning was the first one and second one was the Friday. Only 2 classes at that point of time. And that time, again, the hall was huge. So we had a separate section where there used to be therapy cases. So we had got all the senior teachers coming there for the therapy classes. And we used to have the general classes. And then at some time, there used to be children's classes if you've got lots of children, mainly during vacations and that kind of a thing. So at that point of time, it was there that you are teaching and the senior teachers are all around and they are always there to guide you if required. So there are lots of things which I say that kind of I must have learned through observation or the way it was tackled. So for example, if I'm teaching something, so Sam Uncle himself would be there, or say Jawahar, Birjoo, whoever the senior teachers were there, they would be watching what you're doing. At the same time, if you're giving some instruction, they themselves would be doing it. So they know that if it's not got across, if I've not done something correctly, then one would come to the side and say, okay, you know, you can take it this way, this is what's happened. But there was no interference or interruption in the class in that sense that I am senior, you are, none of those things were there. So I think those were the things, and these people had been with Guruji for so many years. So I'm sure what they've picked up is all that what they would have seen around. That was Guruji was the teacher, and Guruji was the one I'm sure was asked Sam Uncle or Frenia Auntie or Dan Palkewal or whoever were teaching.
So what was it that you took with you from Guruji's classes that you incorporated in your classes? But like from the very beginning, there must be,
So I remember there was a time like earlier we never had separate classes. As I said, forget about elders and juniors and I mean this is children or young adults or therapy. There were no separate classes. But on top of that, there was never a kind of a specific class for a specific purpose. For example, now you've got classes for back pain or for knee pain or say for stress, you know. So there was nothing that was compartmentalized in that sense. So it was at the Piramals, I think, that time Dr. Swati Piramal, she must have told Guruji that we want to have a session and we want to check out about how it helps people in losing their belly fat. And at that point of time, and there was a 10-day session. So normally, earlier during those times, the 10-day session was only taken by the senior teachers, you know, 3-4 of them who were there, it was taken by them. And at that point of time, I was asked to take. So I was like, till that time teaching, okay, doesn't matter, it's a regular class. But for a session, I just know of these 4 teachers who are taking it. So if I'm asked to take a session, I said, what will I take? What can I take? And that also specific with belly fat. And Guruji was there in Bombay. Saturday, Sunday used to be coming regularly. So he said, usme kya hai? You know, what is there? So I was like, Guruji, they're going to measure it. So what am I going to do? He said, no, what you're teaching is what you're teaching, but the emphasis is on a particular area. So for that matter, if you're doing, say, your Virabhadrasan 1, you're teaching your Virabhadrasan 1. But whatever you're going to say is going to do with the area of the, say, lower abdominal region, that kind of a thing. If you're doing a Bharadvajasan, it's lower abdominal region. So what he tried to say is that you're teaching, whatever is there, the principles remain the same, but a particular attention is given to a particular area because that is there. So that has to be looked after. And from there, what I can say is now you can understand even when you're teaching a class, it's a particular thing which is there in your mind at that point of time. And even if you're taking 10 asanas or 30 asanas or 1 asana, it is all to do with that particular thing. So it's not that each one is separate, that in one asana is just the chest, or one asana is for abdomen, one asana. But that's where you start to learn that it's a holistic approach. But yes, the emphasis can be a particular area. And then you say, literally, you can tell them, stand straight, extend your arms up, Virabhadrasan 1, what happens here? You do your Bharadvajasan, what happens? So it's saying you have to just use those words. And you have to give them the effect. So basically, that's how we went. And then there were some people who actually took the measure tape and they were measuring the waist size and all that. And there was one huge guy and he lost some things and you were like, wow. So it was just a test which they were doing. But that was the first time I took a session for 10 days. Otherwise it was more like, you know, teaching once a week or how that was incorporated.
So it was effective for those people who...
Yeah, all whatever Guruji must have said. And then, of course, I remember the first time when I started teaching, as I said, it was at Kolaba. So just to open the light on yoga and sit at night the next day morning when I have to take a class. So it started in that sense, you know, you look at the instructions, though you're doing it, but it was different. Then, of course, it just then you understand what it is like to practice, or I won't say practice, but when you're doing something and you feel something different, and then you try it again, then you feel it's effective, then you try it again, it's effective, and then how that can be passed on. So then it comes through those kind of things. Earlier it was purely, I will say I was mugging up the instructions, if you can use those words, the first time when I started, and literally like, okay, preparing, okay, these are the asanas if I have to take. And I used to read in that sense beforehand, just the instructions, what are there, and then start to instruct. So that I'm talking about more than 40 years ago. Now, of course, it's very different.
You were saying that there were senior teachers in your classes when you were just starting, who were guiding you and who were correcting you in a very delicate manner. So what was the correction or the guidance that they have given that was helpful for you in that time?
So I will say corrections and guidance not directly to do with the asanas that you're teaching in that sense, unless you've gone extremely wrong. So in that manner, I don't remember being corrected in that sense, because you are on the right track, some fine tuning. But the biggest lesson that is learned is that whatever, say, I would be teaching, and whatever each one of those senior teachers knew was definitely way beyond. So everyone knew something else, but it wasn't that when I'm teaching that, okay, this point she's missed out, this point she's missed out, this point it's missed out, it wasn't that. So whatever you have started from there, how the grooming took place. So one biggest thing which we were fortunate to have classes at that point of time with the senior teachers around when you're just starting, is that you could get those things from them as to how you're supposed to be teaching or passing on to the others who are learning, including your, if I can call them assistant teachers or juniors or whatever it is in that sense, that it's not that I am the teacher. That was not there at that point of time anywhere. So it was like when you were saying you're guided. For example, I'm just saying I took, say, back arch, and somewhere, if they could have been that if I use my palms and if I straighten out, if it's going to be helpful, then they will just, on the side if somebody's doing it. So they'll say, okay, have you tried this? Or can you try this? Something like that. So it just came through in that sense.
Like a
it
suggestion.
wasn't that, yes, it wasn't that this is what has to be done. And that I can say for Guruji's now that it's been so many years, I won't say that, it's different when I just started off. That with Guruji, Geetaji, for that matter, Prashantji, all of them, but there was so much of openness. So you have to follow, there is a principle for it, there has to be ethics which are followed, you are doing whatever it is, but still you could do whatever you have understood from that and continue. So what I mean to say is it's not going to be like a robot, if I use that word, or like a machine that if a teacher is teaching, it has to be this, no. You had your own ways, because Guruji himself used to say so many times that every teacher, what they're teaching, they will still be having something of their own, individuality of a person. So that is going to come through in the teachings, and which was okay with it, as long as you don't mess up with the subject. So you should be sure. So Guruji, even when, for example, when there was this earthquake which had happened in Anjar, Kutch. So at that point of time, it was the Aga Khan Foundation who had got in touch with us, and they wanted us to, teach there and all that. And when we had gone to meet Guruji as to what has to be done, and Guruji was the one is like, you are not going there to teach yoga. They have called you because they've lost everything. So nobody is going to come to you to learn yoga. So don't go in your yoga clothes as a teacher. So those were certain things which he said. So basically, what it is like to be one of them. So when you're teaching children, if you feel I'm going here, there you can stop me, but I'm just like, when things come up, I just start to share. So if it's like, if you're going and teaching children, then you have to be like a child. I cannot be sitting like who I am as an adult and talking to them. So accordingly, if you're going somewhere else. So when we went over there, so that was the thing. And one thing I remember very well, he said in Shavasana, never ask them to close their eyes. Because the moment they close their eyes, they can see that whole thing falling, or the people whom they've lost, all the losses which they've taken care of. So how the eyes have to just remain there open, just looking at a particular point, whatever they see. And that I feel is, if it's implemented in some of the children who are very hyperactive clinically, and those things, then those are the things which helps them to focus. So it's not that one is meant for that and one is meant for that, but then how the eyes play an important role initially to get the balanced state of the mind. So that was one thing. Then second thing I remember, he said that when you're doing Uttanasana, and when there has been so much of strain that they've gone through, there's always going to be the neck which is going to remain there stiff, hard, and it's going to be hanging over there. So how like a ripe fruit, the head has to just hang, just a ripe fruit, and which is just hanging. You know, so many of these things which it's not forgotten, even if you're talking about this happened 25 years ago, not 25, but 23, whatever it is, but still, because those kind of things just remain there with you. Then I remember when we were supposed to go to Delhi, there was at that point of time, I think it was some other institute which was there, and they had invited groups of different yoga systems over there for a week, and it was supposed to continue for 2 months or something like that. And the one that survived throughout was Iyengar Yoga in the end. And we were assigned in a manner that every week there was a set of 3 or 4 teachers who were going. First week, of course, it was Guruji who went, and then I think there was Jawar and Birjoo with him, I'm not sure now. But those kind of things, and he kind of told us how to go about with it. And that was the first time that in that sense, I won't say it's not unsystematic otherwise when we teach, but systematic because there were so many teachers who were going at different intervals, and there were 4 classes in a day, 2 in the morning, 2 in the evening, and you had to be in in connect to what you were teaching. Like I could have gone and taught something, you could have gone and taught something, it wouldn't serve the purpose because it was everyone together in that sense which we were supposed to teach. So it briefed us as to how to go about with it, how do you start off. It's always first from what is seen by them, what is visible. Then you go to the back body on the 3rd and the 4th day. You don't talk about the back at all because it's not something that they can see. It can be felt. You know, so those kind of things which were told and which asanas to take, how to go about with it. And there are times when people say that Iyengar Yoga means pranayam is not taught. It's taught only after a few years. But I remember that time when we went, it was a beginner's batch. As in anyone from Delhi, it was open to the general public. And there was Ujjayi and Viloma Pranayam, which was introduced on the 6th and 7th day. Like all of us were there for a week. So it was introduced. So what I'm trying to say is it just depends as to what the way Guruji had gone about with it systematically. So he said, no, at least let them become aware of the breath. And that's why the Viloma, because the moment it's broken up, will they be able to feel it? Will they be able to breathe? You know, different things, how they're effective, use the bolster. So those were the things which was guided. And then after that, when all these things had taken place, it was from Monday to Sunday, and the next lot of teachers would come on Sunday. So there is an overlap. So for example, if mine was the batch which I'm teaching, on Sunday I'm teaching and the teachers are going to teach the next week. They watched what was taught on that Sunday. So they were, all of us were a part of that particular class. And then we depart to go back to our own places and these teachers would continue. So it was, you know, devised in that manner also how the group and the teachers who they are able to impart whatever they have learned. And then after that in Pune, when we had the annual day of RIMI, it was a time that they thought just as a token to all the teachers who had been there. And at that point of time when Guruji said, okay Arti, like many of us had gone, but I'm talking because I remember what was told to me. And at that point of time he said, yes, for winning the hearts of the people through your emotional teaching. And at that point of time, I didn't know what was emotional teaching or what it is. But now that I go back and now that you're there and connect with people, you realize it's somewhere where you were able to connect with them to whatever it is, you know. So that's what he must be meaning by emotional teaching, you know, because each teacher, something he gave of what he would have got the feedback, I assume, from the other teachers who were there and the students, and himself, of course, would know everything that's happening around. So those were the things which was.
How would you say your self-practice has changed since you started teaching classes? Like you were like a relatively, you know, very young and
yeah, definitely. Fresh, you were just doing whatever it is and all that. But and the other thing I remember when we were asked to teach, or for that matter, when Guruji guided, so I said, what to teach? How do I teach? You know, like especially. He said, no, you do what you are doing, what is happening to you, that should become your instruction. So whatever you are doing, whatever you're experiencing, those become your instruction initially to start off with. So he said, if you are, you know, knowing these 5 things, then stick to those 5 things. Don't try to just copy somebody else who's done something, and these are my words, he didn't say copy, but what I'm trying to say, what I understood from it and what I carry forward is just because, say for example, if Birjoo is teaching some class and it is very effective for me, like I could, but I cannot use his words, what he has said and done it, because I won't be able to connect to that. So somewhere from there, what I have felt, what I have experienced, then in my own words, if I get across to them, then even if there are other questions, if people are not able to do it, you are still able to get what you want. The result is because you have experienced it. But there are times when I feel, oh, this class is really good, I feel so good. And if I start to imitate that class, then it's lost, because there's no connect at all. Because then I'm going through my memory. He did this, this is what I felt, it's not memory, it's what happens. And for me, I will say I learned a little more when I was teaching children with special needs. Like I am not officially, technically trained in that sense, but I started around 22 years ago with them. And it was like basically whatever they're doing. And I used to feel that if I'm telling them why they're not able to do it, because see, I was used to taking general classes, or I was taking children's classes at that point of time, was for all the children who came in. And you just do it with them and they follow you, or there was not much of instructions involved for children. But for these children, even if you tell them they couldn't do it, if I myself am doing it, they are not able to copy it, and you're wondering that why is it that you're not able to get across. And that's the time then I think, whether you say it's the intuition which just guides you and something works, something doesn't work, and you just start inculcating their language. Like for example, I remember I was doing something and asking them, is it a straight line, is it bent, something, because to get some response. Before I begin, I need some response, otherwise how do I get across? And they said, oh, this is a standing line. Say for example, if I was doing Uttanasana, they said it's a standing line, your legs. So I started using that language. So whatever the person understands, so then okay, that's a standing line, this is a sleeping line. That was not my language 20 years ago, at least with those kind of children. Then many other things, when you're seeing them doing it, oh, this they can do very quickly. So then you start going as per that. So similarly in the class, there might be something which is there in the head that, okay, you want to do a particular thing. But when you see that it's not coming across, and then you see somebody else doing it and see how, like the observational skills, I think improve tremendously once you start teaching. And accordingly, through the observational skills, then you start to modify things. So there was a time when I was teaching the children with Down syndrome. It was more like young adults, so bigger group. And for them, one is their eyes could never, I won't say they weren't catch, they were designed differently. So it's very different, like if I'm talking to you, I can look into your eyes, you can look into my eyes. So even if I say, look here, that look here never happened. So there was a time, when something like that, I stood straight, nothing, then eyes, these are my eyes. So they also went on, these are my eyes. Then you say, okay, eyes to the legs. So it was literally at that level which one started off. And once that started connecting, then you can see that those children who were not able to understand my language, let me put it across in that manner, and then they could just see the actions and they were able to, because they could connect to you. So I think sometimes if verbally we are not able to connect, or languages or certain things, but if there is connect, which can be anyway, through the eyes, it could be through the mannerism, some way, one thing if you can catch hold of, then from there I think lots of things just bloom out. So after that, I remember once I was in rope Sirshasan before they came in, and they're just looking because they saw something different. They could not see my face. And then somebody looked at my face and touched to realize, oh, is it the same person and what it is? Oh, this is our Arti auntie, they didn't call, like whatever it is. And that kind of a thing. And then you want to do it, no, I'm scared. But then certain techniques you learn. Like for example, Vipridhanasana for some of them, it's again at the back, something that's not known to you. So there's going to be a fear and something's holding you back. So you learn that of tapping. So through that sound and the touch, they just follow you. Then once they do it, so I think many of these things just, evolve over the years when you feel this is not working, and then things start working.
Yeah, I want to dive more into this aspect of your teaching. So I've learned that you're teaching kids with special needs, and kids who have been diagnosed with dyslexia, autism, ADHD. What has been your experience in how Iyengar Yoga could be helpful and has helped them? And what guidance can you give for the next generations of Iyengar Yoga teachers when dealing with this kind of scenarios? And anything in particular that you'd like to share?
Okay, so it was in this SRCC, which is at Racecourse Mahalakshmi. They had this remedial education center. So there is still a hospital over there, and earlier there used to be lots of cases with polio who used to be coming over there. Then they started the day schooling for the children who were there, and so at that point of time there was some yoga teacher who was going there, but he was from some Santa Cruz school or whatever. I didn't know him personally. He met with a severe accident. He lost both his legs. So that was the reason they wanted some teacher. And I had 20 to 24 years ago, I don't remember. And I had lost my mother just a year or two before that. So it was a time when I wasn't doing much or whichever. And I think it was Firoza who said that there is this center and they're looking for a yoga teacher. Why don't you just go there and just check out? And it was supposed to be there for 1 month. Now it's become 24 years or 22 years. That it was more like we will check it out. Because for me what happened is I have learned only through Guruji and whatever Guruji said. When I had learned, it was everything with eyes open, eyes open, eyes open. Basically everything to do with the eyes and especially. And when I went over there, they used to sit with their eyes closed and the yoga started with their eyes closed. So that was the first difference in what I had learned and what they were doing. It wasn't even fair on my part to ask them to do something because see, they have already, there is a time when they need a little different kind of an attention. And on top of that, something that you have learned, you have got used to that. So I remember going and telling the principal that what you all are doing and what I have learned is very different. For a month, both of us decided like the center, their center and us, we will try out. You will not interfere with what I'm teaching. You can give me the feedback. So I can learn from there what has to be done, what has to be done. At the same time, I will not interfere with any of the things that you want to check out because they know the subject very well. I know whatever I was teaching to that extent, I knew what our subject was. So both of that cannot be, tackled with. And she was completely okay with it, that I will not interfere. I said I will not interfere. I assumed they might be seeing some differences that time because for me, to take those children, say that time we had only one class. It was like an assembly hall. And say there were 40 of them coming together. The moment they entered, there was so much of chaos that even to let my voice, which is quite loud if it has to be, to reach across was not possible because they were all over. And I, like I said, was not technically trained to know that what is ADHD, that literally what are their behavioral patterns, where can the distraction take place. So I just started off because what Guruji had always said is with respect to the eyes, that the eyes of the person can tell you everything about that person. So whether they are focusing, whether they're listening to you, it was all through the eyes. So I started off with that, okay, all of you just look at a particular point. Then for that also Guruji had given the guidance, not directly for the children, but it was some other case and, there was a problem of focusing and he said whatever they like. So it could be, say like you can draw the disk of a sun and the rays and look at a particular point. So from there got an idea that for the children they might be liking some cartoon characters and whichever they like. So in the school we couldn't have so many, but at that point of time that this is what it is. So for example over there you have to look at that particular tip. So moment the eyes go, no, look here, look here. So started off with 5 counts, 10 counts, 15, 20 and that's how it built up. The other thing which really worked for them, I would say, is Vrukshasana, of course with the support initially, like you would do with a wall or something, the extension of the arms and the eyes at something that's not moving. And then continuing to count like that. So that really improved to quite an extent. At that point of time, there were some which were very challenging cases, physically also, some which weren't. So the ones who were all right, because see, I mean, this is one has to be careful because there are many of them who would be having seizures, like many of them are prone to that. So epileptic seizures, so you have to be careful of that. Many of them had got hearing impairment, but on top of that, if they are wearing some implant, then how that functions is very different if I take them upside down. Now these are the things only once you deal with them, you know how to go about with it. But initially, you're not sure. So there was a time then I said, okay, Sirshasan after that with the support. So that, no, how can we do it? Or there would be somebody standing any which way. So we have to be careful how that is done. And then I said, okay. And for them, they do it, say, even for 5 seconds and it's done. We've done it. So again, something else, we've done it. Now, how do you increase, because attention span is the biggest problem in that, focus, attention span. Now, how do you go about with it? So I said, okay, I will do it, you will do it, whoever is going to stay the longest. You know, those kind of things. So some challenges you put across, and then it started to help. And like earlier I used to go only for half an hour, now it's almost, I cannot make it for more days. So I go for 4 hours twice a week, because even if they wanted more, it's practically not possible for me. But it started off that way, and I'm sure there was some difference which was seen. And then we had on the annual day, there would be some presentations for the demonstrations. And there was the mother of this child, and he was participating. Now, you know, many things which we take it for granted, we don't even realize, but then you know that it is a big thing for them. As simple as, not all of them, each one is of a different level, but as simple as even holding a pen. So for the demonstrations, and then there was this kid who was doing it, and the mother was literally in tears, because there was always complaint that this kid is never in a place, he doesn't listen, he doesn't do. And because he could be there, say even whether it is Tolasan or whether it is Vrukshasana, if he's there for 30 counts, it was a big thing for his mother, which would have been other 4 counts and 3 counts, and always losing his attention. Then the other thing what happened is sequencing is a big thing. They don't remember what is next, what is before. And when we do demonstrations, it's always with some music that time, and there could be connection of one pose to the other pose to the other pose. It can lead to somewhere. So if you go to think of it, there are so many of sequences which are involved in their thinking, which otherwise it's a big problem for them, you know, even for them. So the memory, all those things started to improve. So I don't know whether it was the connections, and of course lots of practice involved, because you are going to be doing it for an audience. So lots more is involved compared to just attending a class. So that made a difference. And I remember during Guruji's 80th birthday celebration in Pune, there were a few of those children from there whom I'd taken, along with the children from the regular schools, which include my own niece and nephew who were in regular schools at that point of time, that we had this demonstration with, I don't know whether there were 20 children or all that. We have got our Iyengar Yoga annual day in October. So at that point of time, we had thought that since Guruji was visiting us in Bombay, we should have something, and that's how the children's demonstration was planned out. So at that point of time, in the month of October, there would be the test and examinations happening. But I said, so the selection of the kids was done in a manner, I said, how many of you want to participate? And you have to be regular whenever I call you. So I didn't select on what they can do, but the readiness to do it, then it was up to me how to get them to do it. So of course the what will come in, but basically the readiness, and with the parents also, whether they're ready to get them. And once that was done, I said, you have to come for practice. If you don't come for practice, you are out from it. So it became a responsibility for them that they got up in the morning, finished their studies, did whatever they wanted, and then they were coming. Others, they would have not been allowed to come. Parents would not send if they didn't do. So what I'm trying to point out is it's not directly about what they do in the class, but many of the other things which are inculcated in their habit as a human being. So they were responsible because they had to come. So they have to finish their studying. They started waking up in the morning, which was a big task for them. So those kind of things started to come in. And then this kid, he himself was doing Tolasan, that is balancing on the arms. And he saw somebody doing Bhujya Pidasan. And he was so excited because the crowd was clapping. So he himself started clapping and fell down. But you know, that's the innocence of some of the children. That the joy which they see when somebody else is doing it, even if it is one of them. That is something which I think many times we don't see in the so-called normal people. So there is no taint of, you know, jealousy or any of that. It's like one of us, he's doing it, and even so the mom was actually in tears that I cannot imagine that my child can be there focused without moving from places to places to be there. There was this other kid, he was trained enough to do Sirshas and all that. But if you see one of his videos, you'll see his eyes keep on moving still, but he continued to balance. But you know, so some things which are inherent in you, it's there. But how gradually with the practice it can be, it can be taken care of. So many of the, you know, even what Vitaji had spoken about how you can allow them to get focused, you know, many of the tips which had been given are coming to use. And sometimes afterwards it's more like I said, you see something and intuitively something strikes, and if it works, it works. The other thing, if I'm talking about the mannerisms, like there was this kid who was coming to the class and he used to be prone to seizures and very bad seizures. So he used to be like completely drained off, and even when he got it, and you're scared that if he falls any which way, even the parent, I can understand, 3 times a day is not a joke, and over the years, then there was an improvement. So I realized that in this particular center, they've put up the ropes also, because since I'm there for a long time, so ropes Shasana is something, initially they're very scared, it's difficult for them to get in, so you have your own ways, but finally once they're there is something which is affecting them where they are able to calm down. And why I say that is, after that I was reading some book on a parent with a child with autism, and then she said there's always an inherent strain and stress in their nerves. And that's why when they fly also it's a big thing, and many times the passengers are disturbed and those things, because they could be just opening out their arms, screaming, going around, and you will think it's not a well-behaved kid. But actually it is so much of strain in their nerves that's a natural thing which relaxes them when that starts to spread out, or when they scream. So it's something that's boiling, what do you do? So when I read that, I'm putting 2 and 2 together, that might be in rope Sirshasan what happens because of the space that's created in the region of the abdomen and those kind of things. They must be feeling settled down, quietened down. The strain must be released, because we know there's the direct connection of the gut and the brain. Yeah. So basically, moment that is taken care of, I think the pressure or the nervine tension might be releasing. So now I think I can put 2 and 2 together, because otherwise there was nothing that could be explained. I know this is doing and they're doing fine. So in that manner, I will say whether I was fortunate enough to not be studying this, because otherwise I would have had my own limitations or biases that, okay, a person has got this thing, so it's okay if they can do this. But because I was not trained, it was like, why a person cannot do it? So you're going to try different ways to see that they're able to do it. So in that manner, now in the hindsight, I think I was fortunate enough to not be trained. Otherwise, I would have had my own thing that it's okay, like I know, okay, you have injured yourself, it's okay, she will not be able to do it, don't do it. But that couldn't happen, because I was like, why it's not happening?
Thank you for listening to this episode. Join me in the second part of the conversation with Arti Mehta, where we will continue to explore how the teachings of Guruji BKS Iyengar could impact anyone's life.